Oh no, we're gonna have to talk about him again. We're gonna have to talk about him again, aren't we? Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the roundup of the F1 news this week. There's certainly been a couple of cool things that have happened this week, and I really wanted to spend time talking about this. Lewis Hamilton, his first days at Ferrari, his first tests with Ferrari, the fact that his old fitness coach, the person that was probably an unsung hero in his title wins in Angela Cullen, is back. The family is back, and just the boss vibes that he's giving. Um, I wanted to talk about that so much. I was really hyped for it. And then today, on Thursday, the 23rd of January, this guy had to ruin it. So, how has Mohammed Ben Sulayem, the head of the FIA, ruined it this time? Well, the FIA have put in a couple of, they're calling it rule updates, but it also feels like it's actual rules. And I'm going to read them out to you to start off with, and then go from there. Um, and yeah, well, there's a few things that need to be discussed here. So here's rule number one. Um, the fact that there is a new potential breach to discuss in the sporting code, that the general use of language, written or verbal, a gesture, and or sign that is offensive, insulting, coarse, rude, or abusive, and might reasonably be expected or perceived to be coarse or rude to cause offence, humiliation, or to be inappropriate, plus physical assault, um, can result in a race ban. Now, that is nothing new. Mohammed did that, introduced that rule last year, to controversy, but it's nothing new, right? That's the most important thing. It is nothing new. However, this is the other one that they have introduced, and this is the new one, right? The forbidding of any words, deeds, or writings that have caused moral injury or loss to the FIA, its bodies, its members, or its executive officers, and more generally on the interests of motorsport and on the values defended by the FIA. What does that mean? Well, ultimately, a driver can receive race bans, um, just for speaking out against the FIA. That feels wrong. That feels hugely wrong. And that's not just coming from me. That's coming from multiple parties. That's coming from certain team principals that are worried about quoting this. This is coming from the Drivers Association. And oh yeah, by the way, I forgot to mention this. The race ban would also apply to any staff being interviewed. So team principals, the lot. If they speak out against the FIA. And it's ultimately bad because there is so much to speak out about against the FIA. It's wild to me, this. Absolutely wild. What the FIA seems to be indicating here is that now they are above criticism. Can't speak out. Jewelry gates. No swearing. That's just two of the ones that I could think of. There's plenty more. Oh yeah, sorry, the investigation into the Wolves. Right? So many things to criticize, so many things to look into, and it's getting ridiculous that now they're basically saying, no, you can't criticize us. Because here's what the penalties are, by the way. This just gives you a bit of an idea, right? So for international level drivers, of which F1 drivers, NASCAR drivers, anyone in the leading motorsport, right, applies to, right? First offence, punishable by a €40,000 fine. Feels unfair, but okay, they can pay for it. It's pocket money for them, right? Second offence, €80,000 fine. Again, drivers could sort of pay for it, but again, this applies to F1 team principals as well. But here's the one. So, a third offence by €120,000 fine and a 1 month suspension. 1 month. Not a race, not a fortnight, a month. Looking at the calendar, that could potentially be up to 2, maybe even 3 races. That to me is crazy. For just saying that the FIA have got things wrong. What are we living in? Are we living in a dictatorship now? Is this it now? Is F1, is the FIA now that thing where we're above criticism? Because this is the thing, right? There should always be a pathway wherever you are in life. This is not just talking about motorsport. There should always be a pathway in life to be criticised, an opening to be criticised. And ultimately, if there is no pathway for criticism, you've got to think something's up. I myself, been a manager. I'm happy to be criticised, genuinely. I encourage it, in fact, because that's where I can look to improve. That's where I've missed the mark, right? That's important to me. And frankly, any organisation, any group that says, "Oh, you can't criticise us," that gives over the indication we've got things to be criticised about, and it's a bit awkward, And the fact that they've enforced this as well just feels not quite right. Now, I'll mention in this that there was an FIA spokesperson that said that it was to further enhance transparency and consistency in decision making, and that technically these were already part of the rules. But it feels like a very weird one to highlight and stress on, right? Contracts are full of very weird things all the time. To stress something indicates you're worried that that rule could get broken. And so it feels wrong. And like I say, someone, we had 2 months ago George Russell, the Grand Prix Drivers Association director, as well as obviously an F1 driver, saying that everyone's a bit fed up with the FIA leadership. And where are we going to end up with this? Is Mohammed Ben Sulayem going to kill off Formula One? And do you know what? I'm starting to think he might. And weirdly, I sort of want it to happen. Let me explain. I think it's very easy to overlook the political things that have happened in Formula One in the past, right? We're looking at rose tinted spectacles and things like that. But ultimately, there have been some real intense political debates that have gone on in the background that has ultimately shaped the course of F1 as we know it. We had the situation back in the 80s between Pfizer and FOCA. Pfizer being the Formula International Constructors Association, and the FOCA being the Formula One Constructors Association. Ultimately, the UK teams, the international teams, and they ended up at loggerheads. What happened? Ultimately, it encouraged discussion amongst them, so they work a bit better together as a group. It was intense. It was salty. It probably even got personal. But ultimately, it helped settle an intense time. Then we had a situation back in the 2000s Now, I was actually looking into this because I wanted to look into, are we going to end up having a bit of a breakaway and things like that? And we had a situation in 2009 where there was a threat of teams breaking away from Formula One because of the fact that the budget constraints that they were putting on felt too intense too soon. And there was this threat of a breakaway. Now, thankfully, compromise was reached and a solution was reached. But a solution was reached because all parties were open to compromise, adjustments, sorting things out. And so what happened? We had what was called the Concord Agreement, and whilst the agreement wasn't great, it was an agreement that all teams got to make, and it settled things down. Now, maybe looking in the most positive situation, we're going to have a similar situation where the drivers, the team principals, the constructors go to the FIA and go, "This is wrong. You need to sort this out." But do I see it happening? I don't. There has been nothing that Mohammed Ben Sulayem and the FIA have done since he's taken over that's given me any indication that a compromise can be reached. It's getting untenable now. And let's face it, if we did have a breakaway, right? Let's imagine that scenario. Let's say that the breakaway gets caused by, do you know what? All the drivers end up going, "No, we're speaking out together. We're going to take a ban together." Good luck, because that could happen. By the way, I could imagine that happening, and potentially a walkout, a protest. Then, goodness me, got a job on our hands. And like I say, there could be a situation where there ends up being a whole shake-up. The FIA have looked after F1, but there's no need to say that they have to. F1 is something that could be organised in the background. Can organise it with the tracks that they want and all that sort of stuff, right? This is a really tense time, and I'm genuinely, I am angry and disappointed at just where the focus is being put in from the FIA in all the wrong areas. As fans, as drivers, as constructors, as team principals, it's clear what they want. They want better stewardship, races that have the right element of control to ensure safety. The debacle that happened at the Qatar Grand Prix cannot happen again, where a wing mirror was left on the track for 10, 15 laps, just waiting to cause damage to a car, when it could have been sorted out with a yellow flag, with a safety car, right? The situation that's gone on with the race directors that have left. So we've got no one really looking after the races anymore that we can trust. I mean, goodness me, the person that looked after the World Endurance Championships, and I think Andrei Vitic, I think his name is, and he's left. He's been sacked. The situation that's going on in terms of the rules need shaping up in terms of the overtaking and clarifying in that needs sorting out, because right now the overtaking rules is encouraging dangerous driving. And, Max Verstappen has shown that in the fact of he's playing by the rules and he's considered as the dangerous driver. He's considered as the overly aggressive driver. He's considered as the one that is putting other people's lives in danger to an extreme extent. And that is down to the rules that have been set in place. Those are the changes that need to be made. But what have the FIA done? Focused on completely the wrong things. Well, maybe I am one of those fans that is reading entirely the wrong thing into this. Maybe Ben Sulayem has absolutely no control over this vote. Although it's interesting, they don't actually specify how this vote came about, right? How this decision came about. I mean, if that is the case, he's not even in control of his own organization that he's meant to be the president of, and that is worrying if that's the case. But if that is not the case, then Ben Sulayem, I'm sorry, you need to go. There are so many people that I could see doing a better job. You look at the successful FIA presidents, they're the ones that have had experience in Formula One, in intense motorsport. Jean Todt, Max Moser, yes, I know there was problems, of course, about Bernie Ecclestone, right? Bernie Ecclestone was a F1 team principal. Jean Todt was a F1 team principal. Ben Sulayem is not. Doesn't understand it, doesn't get it. I've mentioned this before, I can see Ron Dennis being a better president than Ben Sulayem. Goodness me, despite how much I don't like the man, I could see Briatore being a better president than Ben Sulayem. And this is where we're at. The one thing I will say here is that we're probably going to forget about this when the races come. We're going to forget about this when we have the event and showing all the liveries of the cars, which is coming up very, very quickly, I've got to say. But the next time there's a bit of intensity and a little bit of ferocity between the drivers, which there will be, we need to look on this. Because whilst there are rivals, whilst there are feisty battles that happen and drivers that backstab each other, and the things like what happened between George Russell and Max Verstappen just before the Qatar Grand Prix, things like that, right? Whilst all those things might happen, we need to remember there seems to be only one public enemy number one, and it seems like it's a shared enemy as well, the FIA, and it needs sorting out. This needs highlighting, this needs addressing, because it is poor. It is an absolute poor performance from Ben Sulayem and the people that he has in his group. You know, we had a situation in football where there was an entire scandal, bribery, all that stuff that happened when it came to Sepp Blatter. I wouldn't be surprised if there's something controversial, something, um, some illegitimate deeds going on in the FIA, but it needs clean out. And here's the thing, and this is where almost I want your comments here. If the drivers were to do the equivalent of a protest and a mass walkout, or all of them criticize the FIA and all of them get a month's ban to the point that we might be left with the reserve drivers where the points actually won't matter or anything like that, would you support the drivers? I would. I'd be happy to miss a couple of races to get this cleaned up, to get this sorted out, because right now we're missing out. We're missing out on seeing drivers be themselves. We're missing out on seeing the charisma of drivers. You start telling people what they can't say and what they can't do, they'll do one or two things. They'll either rebel or they will be overly cautious, and then you don't see the real person. And I don't want either of that. Why is it that people warmed up to Sebastian Vettel? Because he started talking about climate change in this last couple of years. Why is it that people warmed up to Lewis Hamilton, especially in 2020? Because he made focus on political issues. It's the human side of drivers that we enjoy because it makes us realize that they aren't living in a bubble. They do see the world around them. They do want to make a difference. But ultimately, that could end. And Pensily, if you're watching and you're hearing this criticism, I still want you to succeed, but this is not succeeding. Please stop it. Let the drivers be themselves. Accept that any human being, any organization is run by imperfect people and can be criticized. And so what if the image gets damaged? I'm sure you can cope with the money that you've got, but ultimately, this isn't right. The people are speaking. The drivers are speaking. The team principals are speaking. The fans are speaking. And now, Mohammed, bloody listen. Because right now, you are about to kill a very beloved sport. The second most popular sport in the world, and you are about to kill it off. Sort it out. Like I say, in more positive news, we have had Lewis Hamilton that has turned up at Ferrari. Beautiful, beautiful videos have been going on. Fantastic videos. It's been great to see, to be quite honest. And he looks at home. He looks smiling, and I'm so glad to see it. So, well done. Probably the next time you'll hear from me is maybe in reaction to the liveries when they get released. But I also get the feeling there's going to be some further developments to the news that's happened this week. If there are, you will hear from me. So until then, guys, take care of yourselves.